but we will be.
Welcome to a special edition of Catholic Champion. I'm your host, John Yep, and I'm with my friend, my famous friend, Dr. Taylor Marshall, and we are talking through his new bestseller book, Christian Patriot, 12 Ways to Make This Nation One Nation Under God. Stay tuned. So here we are, live show with Dr. Taylor Marshall. What's going on, Taylor?
John, yep. Catholics for Catholics. Great to be here. It's an awesome week. A lot to talk about. Things going on, church, state, everything.
Absolutely, there is. You have a new book. It's a bestseller, and so we're going to walk through that. It's obviously right up Catholics for Catholics line. You know, we're an activist movement. We want to bring America back to God. So when I first saw that, you told me that you were coming up with this book plan and spelling it out with 12 specific ways. I was pretty jazzed because, you know, we needed to be very concrete in what our goals are. The left has done that so well and how they've enumerated what they want to do to change society for the bad. On the flip side, we have to do it for the good, and you do that in this new book. So just tell us, Taylor, what going back, just like the genesis of it. When did you think about doing it, and why?
Well, John, let me just say, I mean, you're a big inspiration to me and Catholics for Catholics. Y'all are, to me, y'all are like at the forefront. Y'all are tip of the spear. Y'all are doing advocacy for Christ in the public square. And what really prompted me to write this book and to prepare this book is I looked at, you know, the landscape of conservatism in America, which is kind of what I know, but also in Europe, in Canada. And what we've really seen is over the past 100, but even more than that, few hundred years, the further you get from Christ and Christianity, the worse your society becomes. It's more violent. Birth rates go down. Marriage rates go down. People's, you know, reporting of how much happiness they have and fulfillment they have. Everything goes down. Why? Because Jesus Christ is the Logos, right? He's the rational principle of creation and of salvation. And the opposite of Logos is chaos. And so the further you get from Christ, who is the Word of God, you move towards chaos. And so why isn't it the case that the strong conservative Republican movements kind of, you know, tip the hat to we love God or we have an ecumenical prayer event, when in reality, what makes America great and what made Europe great was Christendom. Christendom is Christian Domos, the house of the Christians. This is where we dwell, and this is where we create a beautiful society based on the teachings of Christ, based on the example of Christ who died for our sins and rose again, and the teachings of the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. Who would not want to live in this society with this common good, presented for the flourishing of human life? And so if we don't promote Christ, not generic believing in God or ecumenical prayer, but if we don't actually proclaim and conserve as conservatives Christianity, you get what we saw last week, which is a deranged, degenerate young man who's confused about who he is, you know, what his gender is, and he takes his hate and his anger out on where? A Catholic church, Catholic mass, Catholic kids. That's not about being more conservative. That's about demons and the need for exorcisms. And what we're seeing is our society goes more degenerate, pornography, OnlyFans, occultism, demonism. And Catholic for Catholics have been right there at the forefront, you know, like with the Dodgers and those fake nuns of perpetual, whatever they were. What we're seeing is it's not just like, oh, he's not a very good person. What we're seeing is the culture is actually focusing, the bad culture, the evil culture is focusing on Christ and Christians. That deranged young man in Minnesota last week, he couldn't kill Christ, even though he had a picture of Christ on his target when he was doing practice. He could, so he went and did what he thought would be the closest next thing, and that is kill Catholic kids. absolutely horrific. And I fear that without Christ, the crucified Christ, in our midst as the rallying point of what it means to be civilized. See, civilization is not just like, oh, we read Socrates and we're somehow Western, and being Western is better than being Eastern or whatever. What made us civilized is Jesus Christ. All the European tribes and nations, they were all pagan. They worshiped totems and idols and had human sacrifice. What made them great is when just read the history book, look at the timeline. They become great when they embrace Christ and they enter into the Catholic Church, and the kings are baptized. And then you start seeing monumental changes in the culture. There's hospitals, there's universities, there's monasteries, there's centers of education, there's schools. People's dignity and their liberties are respected. I know there were some bad things that happened in history, but when you compare that to any other civilization in the history of mankind, that is where we saw political greatness. And it was because not of being Western or being conservative, it was because of the focus on Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. And so we Christians, especially Catholics, we have to not be embarrassed to say, I'm a Christian patriot. Why are you conservative? Because I'm a Christian. Because this is my prayer. I pray the Our Father. I pray the Hail Mary. I recite the Apostles' Creed. This is my worldview. And there's a statement that I've been saying in all my interviews and everything working up to this book, and it's critical to this book. And that is the idea of separation of church and state is anti-Christian. John, I'm a Christian. You're a Christian. I'm an American. You're an American. Nowhere is there a line that runs through me where this is the American citizen part and this is the Catholic Christian part. I am fully Catholic. I am fully American. If the state of me being a citizen and the church, me being a Catholic, are fully integrated body and soul into who I am as Taylor Marshall and you as John Yep, that means that the church and state are already integrated in the persons, in the citizens, in the Christians. Because I don't go in and out of being American, Catholic, American. Some people do. I don't. You're not supposed to.
Would it be fair? How about this for an analogy for the church and state, the way it should be? That is, fides oratio to a degree, right? Faith and reason. You know, Benedict from his encyclical, 1993 encyclical, starts it off saying that the two wings from which we fly towards God are faith and reason. It's like the two. You need both of them. They support each other to a degree, and they help each other in ways. They have a mutual relationship. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that fair to say like that, or no?
No, because reason is our gift from God. It's the image of God is that we have rationality, reason, and we have a free will. It's not our face that makes us in the image of God. It's what we share with God is we have reason and will. All right. And that's what's natural. And then we also have a supernatural calling, which is to be in heaven with God in the beatific vision and to be in communion with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And so that doesn't create like, oh, there's the natural lower Taylor Marshall and then the supernatural. It's all integrated. This was actually what I wrote my PhD dissertation on, 600 pages, the integration of the natural and the supernatural with the calling of God to our human beatitude. It's both supernatural and natural, but it's integrated. And that's the same way with faith and reason and with church and state. The church is higher than the state, but they should both be good. We can't be libertarian and say all government is evil. God instituted government, and it's to be there for the common good, human flourishment. And I don't think, we're in a situation now in the West or in America where we are trending towards the common good and towards the majority of the people or the people moving towards a human flourishment.
And you take up that case, right?
Yeah.
That's like, we're not. And you make that case very well in the book. And you go into why we're losing the culture war. But now let me counter that, like devil's advocate here. Okay, so assuming that we're going the wrong direction. Okay, we're not focused on the common good. But why do you specifically have to be a Christian patriot? Do you really need the Christian religion? Is it like an added bonus that you have it in a republic, or is it essential for the survival of a republic that it's Christianity?
Yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson comes at this dead on. Thomas Jefferson, he put out what's called the Jeffersonian Bible. He took the New Testament and he didn't have a black Sharpie, but he took his quill pen and he literally line item vetoed everything in the New Testament he thought was false and that Jesus wouldn't have taught, including all the miracles, the resurrection, the Trinity, the divinity of Jesus Christ. Thomas Jefferson removed all that. Why would Thomas Jefferson, who is a key founding father of the United States of America, take the time to do that? And if you read his writings, he explicitly rejects that Jesus is the Son of God and he's divine. He explicitly rejects the Trinity. He explicitly rejects the resurrection and the establishment of the church. Thomas Jefferson would be more like AOC in 2025. I just want people to absorb what that means. He was a secularist. And he believed, I was on Steve Bannon yesterday, and he asked me a similar question about this. He believed that you could take the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes, Jesus as guru, Jesus as teacher, Jesus as rabbi, sort of saran wrap that, block it off from everything else about Jesus, who was an exorcist, a miracle worker, walked on water, healed people, raised people from the dead, died on the cross, forgave his enemies, rose on the third day, ascended into heaven. You could seal off all that important supernatural, miraculous things about Jesus, and you could present Jesus as the guru, and that would be enough to have a beautiful society. And the answer is Thomas Jefferson was just dead wrong, because you strip out the power of God. You strip out the power of Jesus Christ. And it's just like what we were talking about with last week. We are now battling demonic movements and demonic people. Jesus as a guru, in Birkenstock.
Not enough, right?
It's not enough. And we've kind of, maybe you could argue that in 1776, when everyone was coming from a Christian culture, they're all breathing the air still of Christendom, even if they're Protestant. They're still in this civilized edifice that's been built by Catholicism. But now, when you've got some people say 20% of young women are on OnlyFans producing pornography. Now you have major occult movements. You have human trafficking like you've never seen, perversions, basically saying children need to have surgeries to transition into other identities, people identifying as animals. We are so far down. We don't just need Jesus, the guru. We need Jesus, the exorcist. We need Jesus, the miracle worker. And it's always been that way. When they were going up against the pagans in Europe and trying to convert them, it wasn't just, hey, here's a nice teacher, you should learn more about him. It was like, you have possessed people here. Y'all want to be exorcised? You guys want to be healed? You want to change your culture? And they're like, yes. And it happened. So that's where we need to be again.
Even though you see it right from the beginning. So fine, Jefferson had that take, a very deist, wrote the Bible afterwards. Also the guy who, I think you mentioned in your book, came up with the letter, the term separation of church and state from the 1803 Danbury letter, right? But so this guy, and you juxtapose him with the only Catholic signer, Charles Carroll, the last signer to die in 1826. He, near his end of his life, writes very specifically a famous quote referencing that it is the Christian religion alone. He was direct. He was clear. Christian religion alone, which will sustain this republic. So you kind of had that, right? Isn't that kind of an interesting juxtaposition between these two different signers of the Declaration?
And John Adams is also one that would also echo what you just said about Carroll. He's also very emphatic about marriage and the family and Christianity and God. And if you look at the original 13 colonies, they're all based on religion, Christian religion. It might be Protestant. We Catholics are not wild about that. But those colonies, even when they become the 13 states, many of them, and I show it in the book, they have, in order to hold public office, you have to profess the Trinity and the Old and New Testament. That is the perspective of what America was founded as. Now, all of that went away over time. But when you look at what is America, how was it founded, you cannot argue that it was anything other than Christianity. What they do is they bring Thomas Jefferson in, who really is kind of a libertarian in a way. They bring in Thomas Jefferson and they're like, separation of church and state. And that's really all we learned in high school. If you went to civics or social studies, what is America? Separation of church and state, unlimited liberties, freedom, do whatever you want. It's a free country, do what you want. That's not Christianity. Christian politics, Christian political theory is about the common good and the betterment of society and handing that on to children and grandchildren. That is true Christian patriot. That is true Catholic political philosophy. We have to get back to that. And there's nothing strong enough. Natural law is great. Natural law is not strong enough. Buddhism isn't strong enough. Rabbinical Talmudic Judaism is not enough. Islam, none of these things are enough. The only thing that is enough is the Alpha and the Omega, Jesus Christ. And some people are embarrassed to say that. But I think we're at the time now where we say, no, that's the only thing. And we must be a Christian republic, Christian nation, Christian kingdom.
I love what you're saying. This is like the perfect book for the perfect time because, as you said earlier in the show, 1776 was completely different. We survived off we were breathing Christianity all around us, right? We didn't maybe necessarily need to be so explicit as direct, even though they actually were, right? Because you just, by the state constitutions, I think all 13 colonies actually had God referenced in their state constitutions. But you fast forward 250 years, and as Christianity has waned in society, we're at a breaking point. And that's why I think you and I, off camera, will discuss on the phone and just say, like, what's going on with the GOP platform, every 4 years? Like, how the heck can we be incorporating this, anti-life vocabulary into something like that? It's because, it's because Christianity has gone down. So we're dying in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, people are like, oh, look at America. It's changing. It's not what it used to be. It's ultimately the change it is lockstep with the decline of Christianity and the influence of Christianity. And I think a big problem with, I can say this on your show with your audience, Catholic for Catholics, a big problem is America had a very strong Protestant basis. And those Protestant denominations, when you think about Presbyterians and Lutherans and Anglicans and Methodists, et cetera, they're not Catholic, and we don't condone it. But on one hand, though, they are, if you look at them historically, they're a lot closer to what we know to be Catholicism than, say, today's mega churches, Bible churches, dispensationalist, charismatic, praise worship. I mean, at least they had a little bit of liturgy and understanding of sacraments, and they baptized their babies. That's kind of the colonial. So even in the religious landscape, what Christian is, especially for Republicans and for conservatives, has even shifted from what 1776 Protestantism was. It's a lot less, even if you want to use these terms, it's a lot less Catholic in 2025 when you go to the, Catholic or the praise summit with the Protestants, and they've got smoke machines, and I don't mean incense, and they got beats and music and, a band and drums and, all this stuff going on. Christianity, that also in itself is a drift away from the founding, because I think all those early colonial Christians, Protestants mostly, they would accept natural law. All of them would have said abortion is horrific. They wouldn't be like, well, women get in trouble and there's problems. It's not that easy to, don't be so judgmental. Like, none of them would have condoned contraception. That Protestants didn't start allowing contraception until the Anglican Lambeth Conference in, I think, 1930. Mm-hmm. So Catholicism had continued, even though people had rejected it. There was still much more of a Christendom culture in 1776. And that currency has just been spent out. Like, it's gone. Mm-hmm. We're at the end here. And so it has to be Christ first, Catholic first.
You're not the only one saying that too. People outside of our Catholic faith too, even like Charlie Kirk did that famous podcast right around Easter, right? Where he said, look, I'm in a group chat with a bunch of Protestant pastors, right? And I was telling them that, I decided to go to the Catholic Easter Vigil. Why? Because I just really appreciate the reverence and the surroundings and then the seriousness. And he said, we need less of that smoke and loud music at some of the Protestant liturgies. So I think it's a trend. And it makes a lot of sense, Taylor, what you say, that Protestantism of today is a little bit different than it was 250 years ago. And I mean, George Washington, for crying out loud, he literally had a picture of Our Lady. It's one of his most prized possessions at Mount Vernon, and that's actually our logo, and John the Apostle. It's a little bit different today. Can I let me test your They told me not to give you just a softball interview here. So I got to ask you at least one hard question, man. Puts you on the spot. Okay, here we go. This is trivia. So here's a quote
Hold on,
from.
let me open up my AI portal real quick. Go ahead.
Get the teleprompter going the other end.
Exactly.
There's no teleprompter involved with this. Okay. This quote's from the guy we were just talking about, Thomas Jefferson. Okay. It goes as follows: whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter, abolish it, and institute a new government. This is from a declaration, right, that Thomas Jefferson wrote. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Okay, he makes the case for revolution. Now, here's the question. Okay, you probably know where I'm going with this. Who said this? What person that we all look up to said this? Very related to this, said it a lot earlier. Quote, for legitimate reason, the people can change the government to an aristocracy or democracy or vice versa. It depends upon the consent of men to place over themselves a king, a council, or magistrate. Cha-ching. Who said that, Taylor? Do you remember off the top of your head? And give this guy a break if you don't know this. It's okay.
I don't know who said that. It sounds familiar, but I don't know who said it.
Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, doctor of the church.
Nice.
So my point is, like,
I thought you were saying which founding father said that. I was like, man, that's really.
I was a little tricky. Okay. I misled you there, man.
Right.
So, but it's like I brought it up because it kind of says what you said. There was almost like a schizophrenic reference toward Catholicism, right? They had to have needed some of the principles to make the Bill of Rights and Constitution. Correct? Is that fair?
Absolutely, and research has been shown that the many of the founding fathers did read Bellarmine, and Catholic sources, Thomistic sources. So, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But I think also, like, when you look at Christendom and you look at, say, the Holy Roman Empire, you look at France, you look at Spain, you look at, Austria, well, that's part of the Holy Roman Empire. But when you look at these nations, what's amazing about them is you sometimes have crises for, who's the heir apparent. And there are some wars and all that. But what's remarkable about the nations of Christendom is their permanence and their consistency. You look at, like, France after the French Revolution, they're just like constantly changing the government. Like the French Republic has a new constitution, however many years up until the modern time. They just can't settle anything. But when you look at the Catholic nations within Christendom, and part of it has to do with monarchy, is there is just a permanence and a stability. And I've sometimes said to people, think of all the money and attention that we spend every 4 years watching the presidential lead up to the election. It's incredible. It's way bigger than the Super Bowl, right? It's a huge thing. What if we didn't have that? What if you lived in 13th century France and not every 4 years there wasn't this big thing with debates and are you this and are you Democrat, are you Republican, are you for him, are you for that? There was just something stable and steady that, and again, there were ups and downs. I know people will bring those up, but if you look at the nations, they're not changing their constitutions or having a lot of internal rebellions. There is something very permanent about it. And I think that shows logos, that shows order. It shows probably charity in generally in the society for a common good. So yeah, with Christian Patriot, I want people to rethink. Again, the whole point of Christian Patriot, it's not about the American founding. I do cover it in there, and it's not trying to be revolutionary and say, let's put in a Catholic monarch in America in 2028. That's not the point of the book. The point of the book is, let us think about how we delicately, from a Catholic theology, how do we integrate church and state? How do we integrate as Catholics in a democratic republic? How do we do that? And then that's the first half of the book. And then the second half of the book is 12 strategies, 12 ways to create one nation under God. And I think, your audience, everyone can implement all 12. And I kind of give bullet points at the end of like kind of, personal implementations, and then like what could be implemented at a state level or a federal level. And so I want to challenge everyone to rethink how they understand politics, how they understand the relationship between church and state. And then it's like, okay, if you're willing to accept an integration of church and state, How do we go about that? And people might be surprised to realize that none of the 12 strategies are about regime change or anything like that. Like the very first strategy is personal conversion in the soul.
Ballot chasing, right? Isn't that one of your strategies?
Which one?
Ballot chasing?
Yeah, ballot chasing. No, there's no ballot. There's
These
nothing
are
actually that's outright you would think of, oh, he's a political person.
Right.
The issues
Not that that's bad, by the way. We're not dissing ballot chasing.
Yeah. But
it's
the issues are to integrate Christ in society is personal conversion, sanctifying your marriage, and sanctifying your family. That's strategy number one, because the marriage and the family, according to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and the church fathers and the Bible and the popes and Leo the 13th and Rerum Novarum, the family is the building block of the nation. So if you think of America, how would you define America? It is the assembly of families. That's the traditional Greek, Roman, Christian understanding of a nation. So like your family is the Lego, and with those Legos, you build something beautiful. And what's happened is in the last 50, 60 years, the new secular religion, they've come in and they've started to try to melt those Lego pieces and deform them and break them apart, destroy marriage, destroy the family. And so when you have melted Legos, you can't build the nation anymore, right? So we have to preserve that basic building block of the nation, which is the family. So the very first strategy is personal conversion. Men, women, you need to have beautiful marriages. Marriages can be tough, hard at times, but we have to exalt matrimony as a sacrament. Another bad thing that happened in the 1500s. The Protestants said matrimony is not a sacrament. They took the L on that one. Big mistake. The second strategy is define matrimony. Judges don't get to define it. States don't get to define it. Senators, presidents, they don't get to define it. Who gets to define matrimony? God. That's it. Well, you're holding your Bible. We don't want to, God said this is matrimony. He invented it with Adam and Eve. He elevated it to a sacrament with Jesus Christ. Matrimony is defined by God. And we as Christians must insist that matrimony is defined by God, just like rights are defined by God. There are no rights. So it's not that the state
necessarily will define it, but it needs to recognize what the church teaches on marriage and adopt that, right? Basically,
absolutely.
Take the definition from the church.
Who else gets to define it? Who gets to define matrimony? If it's not God, who gets to decide it? A quorum of 12 guys?
Right.
Why? Why? Matrimony was invented by God. It's a creation institution. It's elevated by Jesus Christ. It's a man. It's a woman. It's for the procreation of children. And it's a lifelong to death do us part commitment. That is the definition. And so we have to define matrimony, because if we don't define matrimony the way God defines matrimony, and the only definition comes from God. We can't say, well, what does Buddha say about marriage? Or what does Muhammad say? No, that's off the plate. We don't care what they say. What does Jesus Christ say marriage is? Once we have that established, we have just put a force field around family.
By the way, but it's a reference to Christianity itself. You're basically saying that, look, the state has got to recognize not just marriage definition of the natural law, it's the Christian definition of marriage, right? Essentially.
Exactly. Because there's all kinds of definitions of marriage, right? There's the Chinese definition. There's, ancient Mesoamerican marriage, a lot of different, but we only believe in the Christian one. That's what we built our country on. And we're a collection of families, and we're going to put a force field of protection around families. And the only way we can do that is to make sure, and I think Pope Leo the 14th said this in his first few days after being elected Pope. He said that the basis and the good of society is based on the family and a stable union between a husband and a wife, a man and a woman. By the way, if you really get that wrong, everything else I write in the book, it doesn't matter. There's 12 strategies. Strategy number 2 is define marriage. If you don't define marriage and marriage and family is the building block of society, then don't read the rest of the book. We lose every single time. You've just given up everything because now you don't have the family.
Taylor, or people who are watching this, if you want this book, it's an awesome book. We obviously fully recommend it. C4C is doing really exclusive offer, valid till Friday night. Okay, so if you go on our site and you make a one-time donation of just $50 to what Catholics for Catholic is doing, we will send you in the mail, free shipping, all that stuff, a signed copy of this book, Christian Patriot. Highly recommended for yourself, heck, for a pastor, a priest. They need this. They need to have this stuff. Yeah. It's material for homilies in that sense too, because it's what we should be hearing from our church leaders across America as we restore this nation to God. So think about this. Go online. There's a link right there, and you can get a free.
Let me interrupt you. Don't think about this. Catholics for Catholics is an awesome organization. You should at least support them with $50. They do amazing work all over the country. They run amazing conferences. They put out great literature. So you should support Catholics for Catholics, and you'll also get my book. That's cream on. But you should support Catholics for Catholics anyway. And then also you have this opportunity to get the book thrown in. But I do want to. I'm sorry to butt in there and interrupt you, but I do want people to support Catholics for Catholics.
Thank you for that. It's the first 250, by the way. We only have 250 copies of this in honor of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country. So time is limited and books are limited. So get on it right away. Taylor, I remember, this is kind of an anecdote. It's about a couple years ago. You may or may not remember this. And I think this leads to why, why your message, both in general as one of the leading Catholic podcasters in the country, which you are, but also why this book is a bestseller, it's because of what you were known for. Okay, you were known for just speaking about as a dad, a father, normal issues, what's going on in the church, a voice that we need to hear. That's why Harrison Bucker, by the way, that's why he endorsed this book. And if you read the foreword, he specifically says, "Look, I was listening to Taylor on podcasts and was really much just attracted for Taylor's just general catechesis and talking about issues which sometimes weren't easy to talk about what was going on in the church during the crazy years of the last pontificate," right? So, but that being said, do you remember this? 3 years ago, you and I were near Mar-a-Lago, and we were in the hotel lobby, okay? And we were walking, I think we were having a meal, and there was a famous politician, we won't say the name publicly, I don't know if you remember this person.
Yeah, I remember.
And this person was running for governor of a particular state, okay? Very well known. I saw this person interacted, and then they asked me who I was with. And I said, "I'm with Taylor Marshall over there." And I just remember the reaction. Now, this person was not even Catholic. Okay. And when I said Taylor Marshall, they just made a beeline right over to you. Do you remember this now?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. That was cool.
So I'm going to brag on it because we're not going to do it in front of, you're not going to do it on himself, but this person, just the reaction was so sincere. And the direct quote was, during COVID, during the famous lockdowns, when all of our churches were shut down, your podcast fed me. Again, a person not Catholic. Okay. So I just want to put that out there because I think whether it's you, Taylor, whether it's whoever, we got to be doing this. We got to be writing books, Christian Patriot, being activists on the front lines, because we got to take up space, as you say so well often, right?
Well, take up space is strategy number 2.
Okay, what does that mean? What do you mean
take up space? Look, if you look going back to the apostles, but especially going back to Constantine and forward, Catholics took up space in public. You go to Italy, France, Poland, Spain, every single street corner has the Blessed Mother on it, Madonna, the mother and child. Piazzas have a giant statue of the apostles or Moses. There's crucifixes everywhere. People did Eucharistic processions. They did Marian processions. On the Rogation days, they walked the perimeters of the parishes. The priests were there singing, chanting, incenses, crucifix. People saw what we were. And people had statues of Mary. I do, out in front of my house, crucifixes in every room, holy water. You are taking up space. You are colonizing for Christ. And you know who's gotten really good at this, John? The LGBTQ and the Muslims. They get out in the middle of the street and they pray five times a day and they stop traffic. And why are they doing that? Well, they're praying, but also they're saying, hey, we're here. This is our intersection. This is our town. Why does the LGBT march down Main Street in every town during June? They want to say, this is our Main Street. We own this. Get out. This is ours. Why do they want to read books to kids in the library, the public library? Because they want to say this public building is our public building. We took it over. It's putting your flag down. And we Catholics, Protestants not so much, but Catholics have always been good at saying, let's have a procession. Let's put up an icon. Let's put up a statue. Let's process this. Let's sing out loud. Let's do a public rosary. And Catholic for Catholics is great at this. You guys are bringing this back. We have to take up space for Christ. So that's strategy number 2. We have to be seen. And it's not just doing your righteous deeds in public, which Christ warned against. It is proclaiming Christ is king in this place as a people. Poland does this. They say Christ is king of Poland, and Our Lady is the queen of Poland. That's taking up space. And you can do this by putting the Virgin Mary in front of your house, or putting a crucifix on your door, or putting the Epiphany chalk over your front door. People walk up to deliver a package or to visit your house, and like these people are Catholic. You just took up space.
I think you give the best reason for why we should take up space, because if we don't, guess what happens? Some other group is going to do that, right? I'm going to see if my producer can pull up the picture. You've probably seen, it's probably driven past this, Taylor, like this big, ginormous statue of a Hindu god in Texas.
Yes.
You heard about that? It's
like a monkey god. It's a demon. And look, they're doing it. Why aren't we doing it? Why isn't in Houston, Texas? If their statue is 20 feet, why isn't there a 50-foot Blessed Virgin Mary in Houston? That's what you do. Oh my goodness, it's horrible. That's demonic.
So absolutely. So it's like we got to take this back. And you referenced Dodger Rally. I think what made the Dodger Rally so unique and special, because there was the traditional prayer campaigns, the expos, the YouTube, the online signups. That was good. But what made the day was you had people taking up space. You had 5,000 mostly Latino men there in the street. So we obviously love that phrase, taking up space. And we need to do it, because if we don't, we're going to have more of that demonic stuff taking up space for us.
Yeah, the space is available. Who is going to take the public space? And if we don't take the public space, you'll have Baphomet in the public space, and you'll have a pride parade in the public space, and on and on and on. And we need to, beautify our neighborhoods and our culture. If you own some land, put a big cross on it. If you can get a billboard, put the Sacred Heart on the billboard during June. Take up space. That's what we can do. Start small. It ends up with being, major national monuments in honor of Christ.
Out of all your 12 different ways that you propose to make this nation one nation under God, what would you say is the most controversial statement out of those 12?
Well, let me just run them off real quick, and then maybe we can decide. So number 1 is Christ in the soul conversion. Number 2 is take up space. Number 3 is define matrimony. 4, family and birth rates. That might be the most controversial. Birth rates. We can't just say 2 kids per woman average is okay. We're dead. Number 5, abortion, ending abortion. Number 6, school choice, homeschool, private school. Educating the children. Number 7, parental rights over kids. That's to do with healthcare and all other kind of things. Number 8, pornography made illegal. Number 9, end human trafficking and child abuse. Number 10, just war and foreign policy. Number 11, foreign aid for privilege for persecuted Christian groups and for other Christian nations that share our values. Like, we shouldn't just be sending billions to Israel when they don't like us. We should be having alliances with Poland, Hungary. We should be using our money to protect Nigerian lay people and priests who are being killed every single week, slaughtered. And then number 12, slavery as debt, taxes, and inflation. So those are the 12 strategies. The last one's an economic one. So I think conservatives, if you took like a MAGA Republican and read through this, I think they're going to agree with pretty much everything. I think the one that would be shocking the most would be birth rates. Because if you have under 2.1 average births per woman, your society begins to decline. It collapses. And the deeper you go under 2.1, the amount of births that you have to get back up, it becomes almost mathematically impossible for women. So once you get in America's, I think 1.7, 1.6. We've already crossed the line. Yeah. So we're in a bad place. Now Catholics are around 2 something. traditional Catholics who attend Latin Mass are 4+ per woman. Mormons do well. I think Muslims in America are at around 3 per woman. Mennonite, Amish do pretty well. But as a general society, like once you go under 2.1, that's replacement level. Pulling out of that nosedive to just keep humanity alive, like going, becomes extreme. And you know who the biggest advocate for this is? Elon Musk. Elon Musk is tweeting these numbers out once a week. He's like, he's like a savant. And he's like, I don't know if you guys realize that the birth rate is kind of the biggest deal right now. And everyone's like, whatever, let's talk about Epstein or whatever.
How crazy is that though? Like, why is that?
He knows. He's out there. He's like, what, on his 10th kid or something with different women? Not good. But birth rate is so key. And you can convert people, and we have to convert people. Christ tells us to. But the single most important factor in societal influence is the number of people, and birth rate does it. Like the Catholic Church is growing so fast in places like Africa, but it's primarily driven by birth rates. And so you introduce abortion, you introduce contraception, you introduce feminism, where you say being married is unglorious, it's not glamorous, it's horrible. Having kids is nasty and plain, and driving minivans is for losers. And you just pound that into young people, especially young women, and you bring that birth rate down under 2.1, dude, it's game over very quick. Like you can put the models into AI, like ChatGPT, I've done it, and do the models. Like, okay, what if America's at 1.5? Like when do the native, I don't mean Native American, like Indian native, like the American, generally white people culture, it goes away pretty fast, Right. And if it's just the Muslims having over 2 kids, guess who gets America pretty quick? Muslims get it.
And they get that. They 100% get that, right?
100% get that. And we Catholics used to get that.
And it's not even just like
brainwashed.
Yeah, it's not even just a pure like, okay, if we got to get our stats up, like, for, I don't know, yards per carry for running back on the football field, like to win the game.
We got to get our stats up. And that's why I think it's the most controversial, because, you get someone who's maybe over 55 and they're reading through the book and they're like, wait, am I supposed to tell my daughter-in-law, like, you got to pump those numbers, honey? Like, you need to aim at minimum 4 kids. Like, that's an uncomfortable conversation. I don't think conservatives or even Catholics or Christians are comfortable addressing the issue out loud. Like, hey, we really need you young Catholic women to be like your great grandmothers and be heroic and have children. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit out of the box. The Overton window hasn't gone there yet, but I think it needs to, or as Elon Musk says, like, cooked, like it's over.
Because it's deeper too. It's like, it's what it does also to society as a moral people, when you have this selfish, like you say, selfish civilization that doesn't want to have kids and refuses to be open to life. So it's
and why build a society if I don't have any kids? I don't care about schools or roads or parks or clean air or immigration or morals or even really crime, because I'm going to live another 30, 40 years and then I'm gone, and who cares? But if you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic, if you're a priest, a father, a mother, a nun, a monk, you realize that the future is in the little ones, right? We have to create something wonderful for them. We have to inspire them to attain to, the gospel, the kingdom of God. And then we have to provide them, with a beautiful church. And I mean, not just a building. I mean, the Catholic Church, a beautiful state. They're proud to be American. They're honored to be Catholic. And then they continue to build it, and then they hand it on to their children. This is why Christendom was great. It was generation after generation of people sacrificing and leaving something a little bit better for the next generation. And that is the Christian worldview. That's the Christian patriot. And again, the book, Christian Patriot. Patriot means love of the patria. Patria is Latin for fatherland. I like the idea of calling it not a nation is from Latin, natus, where you're born. It's kind of passive. But patria is love of your fatherland, which is love of your father. It has the idea of intergenerational wealth and inheritance and in tradition, going all the way back to God the Father in creation. So I think emphasizing patriotism, not as like, I'm proud to be an American, but patriotism is love of the patria, the fatherland. And that's a beautiful thing. And we have to get back to that. It's not just about national pride. It's about what my grandfather gave my father, and what my father gave me, and what I give to my son, and what he gives to his son. And we're building. It's momentum up, not momentum down. And right now we're in the down.
I would almost say like that's controversial, obviously the birth rate, but also the marriage. It sounds so basic, but I think you would agree with this too, that what you and I see kind of with the GOP, for instance, MAGA, that there's this kind of right now, yeah, we turn the other direction completely on men on women's sports. We practically won the elections off that last cycle, but there's this kind of acceptance that, okay, we're not going to like go after our kids with the transgenderism stuff or do the mutilation, but homosexual marriage, that's allowed, right?
Right.
That's okay.
And even some
is that not the Achilles
even some with the trans they allow.
What's that?
The GOP even is tolerant of the trans issue now.
Are they? See, is that not the Achilles heel of a movement that's really wants to make America great again? If you have that such a basic point right there, you're wounding yourself.
Well, let's go back to the definition of marriage. And I talk about this in the Christian Patriot. If we concede, okay, we're going to have a civil society, God doesn't get to define matrimony. God doesn't define marriage. We're going to take a vote, or we're going to go to a court and a judge is going to decide what marriage is. Okay, so let's say we go down that route. Once we concede that point, John Yep, we now have conceded the point of what is a man, what is a woman, when does life begin, all the key, most important top 5 questions about what is humanity and human life. We have just conceded those to the quorum of 12 or the judge. Because if you can allow a redefinition of marriage, which God decided, okay, well, God decided male and female, but we're not allowing that. So now the judge gets to decide male and female. And now we have to decide when life begins. And now we get to decide when life ends. And now we have abortion, euthanasia, trans, homosexuality, contraception, and divorce and marriage. You know, like every single like hard-hitting social issue just blew back into our face because we conceded on matrimony. And so we just can't. Like, this has to be the very bedrock of our movement as Christian patriots. God, like, we need signs. God defines matrimony. God,
it's our
like, we have to just
we can't
beat
give up
it
that
into
hope.
ourselves and beat it into our society that I don't really care what the Supreme Court says or what a group of people say that we've redefined marriage as. I don't care. There's only one definition that flies, and that's it. So I think that's a really important point. So I think you're right, John. I think probably the marriage one, people will kind of squirm at about, like, oh man, that's really strict. But think about it. If you're not strict on that, everything slides away. And then I also think the birth rate one as well, they're like, well, you know, we have one kid and it's going great for us. But I would just challenge, like, is that the best plan for society? Because if everybody has one kid, we have population collapse by 50% in one generation. And then just keep running those numbers in Chat GPT, and there's nobody here but like a few Muslims or a lot of Muslims.
Precisely. And they're openly saying that. So it's obvious what's happening in Europe right now. So, okay. So people want to know, did your wife, Joy, have any part right in this book?
Man, she kept the kids quiet a lot while I was writing.
That's important. That's super important.
No, I mean, she read the whole book and gave me feedback. And obviously, like, my worldview comes from my marriage, from matrimony. And I've just realized, like, that's my vocation as a Catholic, is a married man. I'm a husband. And I think that's kind of part of maybe I've actually articulated this or thought about it, but, you know, if you slip on that, if you give up on that, everything down the list, I think, starts to also get compromised and slide away. And this is also, I think we could say, you had criticism of the GOP. It's not just, the L and the G's and the B's and the T's. It's all in the GOP. It's no secret, major divorce culture. Like, let's be honest, major divorce culture. And you go back and you look at this perpetrator in Minneapolis, like, when did he start losing his mind and getting into all this crazy stuff? His parents divorced when he was 11 years old. They were, from what I've heard, they were a traditional Catholic family. They even went to Latin Mass some. There's a picture of the mother holding a rosary and a crucifix outside of a clinic. So like, they were pretty fervent, and then a divorce happened when he was 11 years old, and just downward spiral from there. Again, St. Paul says marriage is an icon of Christ, the husband, and church, the bride, the union. We're not perfect. We're not infallible. We're not impeccable. Like, marriages struggle and there's disagreements. But if your kid, the most important image of Christ in the church for your kids from age birth to 18 is mom and dad. That is an icon. It symbolizes Christ in the church. And if that is obliterated and that is destroyed and that is trampled upon, you have some major psychological issues with the kids and trauma. I'm a child of divorce, so I know that. But also, you have, as parents, communicated to your children that Jesus doesn't love the church, or the church doesn't love Jesus. Right? You've inserted an interruption in the divine order. It's very hard to deprogram. So we also have to be very, very vocal about divorce. And Ronald Reagan was the first governor who signed in no-fault divorce. Ronald Reagan, California, first state. Ronald signed it. And I put that in the book, Christian Patriot. But years later, and every state started following after that. Guess what the last state was for no-fault divorce? I believe it was New York.
Of all places.
California the first. I think New York was the last. I might have that wrong, but I think it's New York. Years later, Ronald Reagan said, I very much regret that. He might have even said it as strongly as it was one of his worst decisions to sign a no-fault divorce. So he did sign it in, but later in life, he realized that it really destroyed the country.
I think some of my closing thoughts, and I'll let you kind of finish this off, but hearing that couple, that their son became a trans shooter in Minnesota, they divorced, but they started off in a Latin Mass, where they were very conservative Catholics. Man, it can happen to any one of us. Yeah. Therefore, the need to pray for each other. Okay. It's so crucial.
And realize that the devils are attacking you even more.
And funny, in the wake of this, besides talking about gun violence and trans and stuff, all that stuff, what was like the number one trending topic was literally prayer, right? You had the vice president, you had the Department of Homeland Security, I think, issued a statement as well from the X account talking about the need for prayer, right? So that, I'd say that's right along with Christian Patriot.
That's a win. Yeah. And think about it. If you lived in 13th century France or Portugal or Poland or whatever, and a major crisis happened in society, everybody in the government, governors, senators, emperors, kings, they would all call for prayer, fasting, prayer, processions. The archbishops would be out in the streets and the priests. I mean, that is what we want. That is an integrated church and state society.
We have days of fasting and prayer from the presidents of the United States.
Exactly.
Abraham Lincoln had several of them.
Exactly. Right? So that is an integration. And the argument is in the book is we've all in America up until probably around the 1950s, when they really started hammering on Bible and prayer in the schools, we always had a kind of an integration. But what I show in Christian Patriot is we need a much stronger integration, even a recognized integration, that the state is the citizens and the citizens are Christians. And I use the example in the book. If you came into my house and you saw a crucifix and an icon of Mary and holy water and Bibles and missals, you'd be like, oh, they're Catholic. And then I was like, all right, let's pray. We're going to have dinner in the name of the, like, whoa. Don't do the sign of the cross in front of me. That offends me. It'd be like, you're in my house. Well, I don't like that. Right. Don't do it. I'd be like, get out of my house. Well, if the nation, and we can close on this, if the nation is the collection of families, then what I just described should be the national policy. because we are just a collection of nations where we have statues of Mary, we have crosses, and we make the sign of the cross, and we pray over our food, and we celebrate Catholic saints' days and holy days of obligation. And if every family is that, and you bring all the families together, that is a nation, right? That is a patria. Now, what we got to do is we got to convert 51% on all the way up onto 100% of the majority of people to say, no, you can't come into our town and have Sharia. You can't come into our town and pray in the streets 5 times a day, the Mohammedan prayers. And you can't put up a monkey-headed God in Houston. This is a Christian nation, and write them on out. So that's the goal. And I think, and in this book, people might hear this and be like, oh, that's so far out. That's never going to happen. It happened in the Roman Empire, which was way bigger than America. Happened in the Roman Empire from 313 to by 381, they had Catholic laws on the Roman Empire's books.
Wow.
313 to 381. And it wasn't even a democracy. It was an empire.
What do you mean by example of Christian law? Like, what does that look like?
They had laws restricting prostitution. They had laws regarding Sunday. They had, they banned the gladiatorial games. They banned crucifixion as a punishment because of Christ. So they were already implementing laws on the books and marriage laws. I in the book, I showed the Roman Empire's adoption of Christian theology in their marriage laws. Started really with Theodosian 381. So by the 380s, you start to see that, and then moving all the way in the 500s, like the emperors are constantly adding laws that reflect Christian morality. And again, in 313, they were killing Christians, and in 381, they're putting Christian laws on the books. That's pretty fast.
Extremely fast, 50 some years, right? So, well, Taylor, we're grateful for you coming on the show. Obviously, we love chatting. We always have great discussions. I think it's perfect that we ended on prayer. It's a big part of what we do here at Catholics for Catholics. We have our weekly patriotic rosaries, and then, of course, our yearly event, Catholic Prayer for America, which, Taylor, you were there last year when we brought the Holy Eucharist to the house of the president for the first time and prayed there in the full display of Catholicism.
Taking up space. Big
That's right.
time.
Absolutely. We'll be taking up space in D.C., the nation's capital, this year, March 19th. We got some incredible speakers lined up for that too. So Catholic Prayer for America, that's what we have to do. So thanks again, Taylor, for joining us. Get the book. Highly recommend it. It's important to have it very clear. You got to have your strategies of what you're doing. We all want to make this nation one nation under God, but have your goals right there in front of you and be working first in your own family and then outside among your neighbors to bring the nation back to Jesus Christ specifically. This has been a special edition of Catholic Champion. God bless you all, and fight on.